আপনাদের সবাইকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ আসার জন্য। আমি পুরোটা বাংলায় বলার চেষ্টা করব না, আমি ইংরেজিতেই বলার চেষ্টা করব। বহু বছর বাংলায় মানে ফ্লুয়েন্টলি বলার অভ্যেসটা চলে গেছে। আজকের এটা মানে বলতে হবে যে এটা সেলিব্রেশন অফ এ লাইফ, অ্যান্ড দিস ইজ মোর দ্যান জাস্ট অ্যাবাউট me and my father. It's about everybody else. কিছু বছর আগে যখন বাবা যখন আমেরিকায় ছিল তখন আমরা আমার সঙ্গে কথা হতো ফিলোসফিক্যালি এবং আদারওয়াইজ যে কি হবে, what is going to be the future for them. They want to come back to India, spend time in Pondicherry, live their last lives over here, and also give me time to figure out my own journey itself. And I said, my journey will be figured out, don't worry about me. I told them that even if you go to India, wherever I am, I'll be able to come to you whenever you need me. And so on Saturday morning American time, which is essentially it is late afternoon here in India, বাবু আমাকে ফোন করে বলল যে it's critical, you need to come. Within 2 hours I left home to take a flight and come over here. So I kept the promise to come over here for a different outcome though. Babu chilo airport. So he picked me up and we were talking about this journey. And it was not about the loss of a person, but it was about a person who has lived through his life, and I felt that we were part of that life. Each of us had our own life. He made us as part of his life, and we made him as part of his life too at the same time. সোমবার দিন যখন বাবার অন্তিম যাত্রা এখান থেকে হাসপাতাল থেকে এখানে নিয়ে এসে শ্মশানেতে নিয়ে যাওয়ার উপযোগ হচ্ছিল, বাবা যখন এখানেতে নিয়ে আসা হচ্ছিল, আমার যেটা সব থেকে সুন্দর লাগলো, যেটা সব থেকে বাবা হয়তো নিজেও ভাবতেও পারতো না যে এরকম হতে পারে, বাট এখানকার টিচাররা, স্কুলের টিচাররা, তাদের আমি থ্যাংক ইউ বলতে চাই যে আপনারা স্বতঃস্ফূর্তভাবে এসে একটা গান গাইলেন বা করলেন, যে এই যে chanting, the power of the chanting really liberates the soul. And that is what I felt, that he is on a path that essentially is taking him to that end state where he wanted to always go. And that is something that he lived for throughout his life. Now, obviously, I can always talk about being a son of his, about me and my father and all those things, but that's not what I'm going to talk about today, although I will touch upon some of that. আমি এই কিছুদিন ধরেই আমি বাবাকে বলতাম, এটা কথা হতো মাঝে মধ্যে, যে I see your life is in like 4 phases, very distinctive phases. Each phase has made you or helped you to build a new approach to what it can be, what the ultimate can be, and you have realized all of those vision of that future. তা আমি শুরু করব, আমি খুব সংক্ষিপ্তভাবে বলবো, কারণ বাবু দাদা অনেক ডিটেলে বলেছে, শাশ্বতীও অনেকখানিটা বলেছে, আর আপনারাও অনেকেই জানেন, but there are certain interesting parts of it. দেখবেন যে connection between each of these phases, what it meant and how it made him to move forward in his own spiritual journey, which is where he lived his full life essentially. And that's what we are recognizing over here. We are celebrating that part of his life here today. So I'll start here. I put together a few slides for many people who have not seen it. And Baba da Shumitrake dekachilo, absolutely you must show them. You should actually talk about it. I wasn't planning to do it, but I will just leave it for people from our family, extended family and others knows some of these pictures, but still for others, just to see who this person was in his own life and what he has done. So let me go ahead and play this through this clicker and we will see. So this is essentially his journey started in Bidden Street, and what you see there is on one side is their house in Bidden Street. That's my grandmother, and and you could see a very different personality then, and he was very polished, upright, went to a boarding school, and always proper. That's what I learned. Obviously, I'm not aware of it. I have heard from others. And even when he joined the Civil Aviation Department, it was a very much of an entry-level job. And he went with a suit. Everybody thought that somebody senior has come to meet them, and so they were completely surprised. Who is this person who has come in? And then they realized that he's actually an entry-level person who has come in. But it has carried him a long way from there, and you'll see some of those effects of it. Now, that was the beginning of his journey. Obviously, the key event in his life was obviously meeting and marrying my mother. And what we see there is, a very different picture, a different part of the life. And, a lot of people here probably know much of those stories, and I'm not going into that. But really where he went from there is my arrival, which was another part of his story, which is where he was still traveling between Kolkata to Dibrugarh in Assam to Balurghat in Western Dinajpur back in 1960s, late 60s, and then eventually landing in Kolkata just before the Bangladesh War in 1970s. And he was involved, and you'll hear from one of his colleagues about his journey there and all of those things. And again, I'm not going to go there. But then events started happening in a very specific ways. And, he was in the airport, well recognized, and you will see in the next picture, there was an article that was published last year in a newspaper over here, how he was involved in some of the biggest historical event of, formation of the Bangladesh, liberation of the Bangladesh, arrival of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman to Kolkata on his way to Dhaka, and meeting them over there at the airport. And so telling all of these stories were very, very interesting, even for me. I was very small, I don't even know all of that part of it. But these events were happening as it went forward with it. So that's where, the work associated with it, Baba khub explain kore bollo je ki kore Baba madrase থাকতো আমাদের বাড়িতে বহুবার এসেছে 14 বারের মতন এসেছে relics. That was a very definitive moment. আর যেটা আমি বলতে ভুলে গেছি, যেটা বাবাদা বলেছে অবশ্য, যে meeting Joya Pishi and Dadu, Pradut Kumar Bhattacharya, on that Sunday, third Sunday morning, was the turning point of his life. It changed the entire direction of what it is. Now, obviously my mother was part of that, and I inherited indirectly or directly as part of it, although I was small, but became part of that whole thing. So I can always look at it from that perspective with that, sense of pride and other things, because I have that heritage to carry forward from that point onwards. So what we saw was that from that job perspective, what he did, he became almost like the instrument, we call it the instrument of the mother, in sense that things that were happening, like for example, being there to guide the Sri Aurobindo's relics going to different parts of the world, in different parts of India, it was as if he was chosen to do it. It never happens. It has never happened since then. It has never happened before that. And so that was very, very different. It basically created a different perspective in him. He was again chosen to build the airport in Pondicherry. We had the ashram trustees there. Champaklal was still alive. He came there. And it was essentially one of the things that was happened was there is a VF signal that is used. I think it is a VF, it's called. And he was able to get it as Om. So when the aircrafts arrived, it could hear the Om as a sound, or as an example of it. That was the kind of things that was happening over there. Now, this is the next picture is essentially about this, the various, every single time the relics came to our place. And it was essentially something that I will also never forget because I was part of that as much as I can. The next part of it was essentially when he retired from his job and went to live in Pondicherry. And Baboda mentioned that that was one of the most joyful time for him because he could meet not just the ashramite, but be sitting there in the reception, in the front gate of the ashram gate in the morning with a smiling face. And people remember that. People have talked about it and I have heard about it. But because of the work, I started to move away from all of these into different places, eventually living India back in early 90s. So I am not fully involved in a lot of those things, but I am fully aware. Of course, we didn't have cell phone, internet, and all of those things those days. So most of the communication used to be on paper, letters, and all those things. And I still remember, I forgot to mention this. Back in 70s, one of the times when he was in Allahabad, and actually Baboda mentioned about that at the CATC, which was the training school, and that was the time when one of the Mahakumbh happened. And he spent many days in the Mahakumbh, spending time with all the spiritual leaders there in their camp. And he wrote me 5-page long letter. I still have that. It is an amazing detail about everything, what he was feeling spiritually in front of these various spiritual leaders who had their own camp and seeing what was going on. It was an experience of something that he was going through at that point of time. So he was a great writer. And one thing I want to tell you also, since early 70s, he had a habit of writing a diary. Every night he wrote something or the other in the diary. It's all there with me in US, every single volume of it. And he told me very, very specifically, you are not to read a single page of that. And I have not done it. With his moving on, obviously I will destroy those eventually. But my point is that, it was a practice that he kept. There are very interesting small things that actually habits create, memories create through various mechanisms as an example of it. The next part of it was him, which was the third phase of his life, was come and spend time with me in the US. And this is the most important for me personally because I have lived away from home, from them for decades by then. And so for me to have them with me was very, very special. And this actually opened up a very different part of him because through something that I like to do, which is photography, nature, and other things, he started spending more time and started to see a connection between the nature and the spirituality and the magnificence of the mountains and the rivers and the ocean and how it essentially evolved and connect. And he calls this a symphony of life. He wrote an essay and sent it to me the other, I found it out. He gave it to me, I remember, but I haven't read it fully, but I read it recently and I shared that with Baboda recently also. And he talks about what he felt. And he was connecting with people at every level. And in this picture, what you see on the left-hand side, it's in Hawaii with a tribal leader, Hawaiian tribal leader. He was very quickly got connected with him and was able to spend time and talk. And he was constantly connecting with people of different culture, faith, and learning more about it and enriching himself in ways that we probably always don't think of as an example of it. So I essentially worked with him to create a small book, or rather an album, published album called Symphony of Life. Now what's interesting about this book is that he saw shapes in everything that is around us that we will probably ignore in all possible ways. And you see here some of the samples here, like, an cactus that has been cut with the face of an owl sitting there, or a branch that looks like a elephant trunk. But the view to see things beyond the normal through light and other things was something that he was starting to realize, as starting to visualize. And I was fortunate to capture those aspects of it and create this simple book. This book is available. If anyone wants it, I can make it available to you guys. But the idea here is that that was the kind of experimentation he was doing at that point of time. And then came the time when he moved back to Kolkata. Well, he came to Pondicherry first, but then quickly things turned around and he moved to live in Amurthu. And he told me in many ways that this has been one of the most joyful time that he has spent, living with, all of the, people who are here from Amurthu, and how much he enjoyed the interaction, the talking, and he was able to give himself, provide different things like, reading Shabitri, and not just reading Shabitri, translating it in Bengali and making it easily understandable. That is a significant amount of work, and he mentioned to me that this is really a hard work, but he took that as part of his ability to do it. And so, end of the day, I think, when I look back from, on that Monday when, the last journey was just about to begin from Lokhi House to Boral, I could hear the chanting in this building reverberating and, and celebrating his life and making it an onward journey. And I could visualize a pathway that is lit up in a golden light, that he's walking and is ready to reach that destination, wherever it is. And so we all are blessed to see here, and as I said, we are part of it, and he made us part of him. And that is the biggest learning that we all can take from here on how to live our life going forward. Thank you.